6 to 7 people showing up in the TC Lounge. And Gene suggested this idea of having a space where everything is allowed. Meaning, like, if you wanna talk shit about someone, if you wanna curse someone, if you wanna, you know, suggest you're in love with someone, whatever it is, it's all is permit, all is allowed kind of space. And he probably will post it on the forum for advice process, but he suggested to create a safe space for any kind of comments and any kind of stuff, so in a way that Gravity can follow it up if there's a conflict that was expressed or anything like that. And I thought about this question based on that. Like, what is your safe space in your normal life, if you have one? And do you feel that there is a safe space in TEC, and where? So I will start, and usually my safe space is either playing a video game for some reason, and my other safe space is to just like being like close the windows of my room and just stay in silence for a bit and just like sort of recalibrate myself. And also my little house in Panama, it's a safe space because it's in the forest, so I feel like every time I'm there I feel safe. And at DC, I feel that this call is a safe space for me, and the Steward's call I feel is also a safe space for me for some reason. So those on my end. How about you, Tam?
I'm thinking, like, what do we need a safe space for? Like, if you're feeling very, a safe space. I'm going to try to define what a safe space is for me, and then so that I can answer it. I think it's a place where you feel calm if you're disturbed. Safe if you feel unsafe or are overwhelmed and can't deal, this kind of thing. Like if you're overwhelmed or, and I think, I don't know if it's the easy answer, but things can seem disproportionately bad sometimes when you get like stuck in some kind of loop. And for me, it's like just going and hang out with my kids and laughing on the floor, and it's like, and you just don't feel like anything is that serious anymore, or like reading a book on the couch together with my youngest one who's growing rapidly. So I find like when I'm feeling like I'm, I don't know, emotionally, but I can't talk about it. Like there's people I call if I need to talk about something, just to vent, There's people that I talk to if there's something that I know can help me recalibrate if I'm reacting out of proportion, like to what is expected or would be normal. But then I'd say just laughing with kids is like kind of an amazing hack. It's like this really cool life hack where it's just really everything feels great again. Now I'll pass to you, Gideon.
I love when you kind of hear a question and then somebody who goes right before you completely changes what you think you wanted to say. Because what you said really resonated with me, Tam. But I guess, what I was originally thinking is that, for me, I having come from like a corporate, that was like my work before, and then the nonprofit world after that. For me, the biggest thing to take refuge from is like my own self. It's like my own like internal chatter, just like, and so, what other people are doing that may elicit that is like, that's just the environment. And sometimes like it can be intense, like other, certain people can have a huge impact on that noise, right? So I would say that for me, it's like meditating, it's like finding time to meditate. It's like finding time in nature. Those are the things for me that give me my greatest safe space, I guess. As for TEC, I have found that my greatest, safe spot, what do you call it? Safe space is I think it's more in one-on-one conversations I've had, to be honest. That's where it feels the most real. I'll pass to Jason.
I will echo a similar sentiment. I wasn't exactly sure what to answer with as I started to ponder this question over. I'm still not sure. I'll be honest. I don't know that I've ever actually had to think about this enough for myself to know what that would mean. Um, which is kind of odd now that I think about. But I think that that's where I'm at. Like it's interesting to hear what other people are saying and how there are different reflections of different things that they're reacting to and using different situations to help, again, emotionally, and psychologically react to things. So I'm not really sure exactly what it means. Something I obviously need to spend some more time thinking about. So, and as far as the TEC, I think I can understand where the question comes from, and I just wonder whether that's actually the point. Maybe that is in fact the point, is that everything does need to be transparent and possible, only because without that, then there is yet a constraint in the situation. If people can't be allowed to do one thing, it's probably a constraint on something else. So it probably is part of what we're trying to do. So, and I will pass to Costa.
Thank you. In my case, I think my safe space is being with myself on my own. I kind of live on a fragile balance, and I'm really affected by inputs that come out of myself, being noises, people talking. I don't know. I just need to be like in my studio on my own, isolated for the world, and I'm like the happiest I can be. And regarding the TEC, I think this call is also a safe space for me, because I know you all. It's like the people that I've spent more time with, so I feel like there's the least amount of unexpected things that can happen in this call. And I'll pass it on back to you, Edu.
Thank you. All right. We will run through the agenda today, which is a very basic agenda for today, actually. The first one will be the update on what we did, the follow up of the audit that Jason did on the TEC Discord. Jason, would you like to briefly explain what we did and next steps?
Absolutely. So yeah, we had a lot of fun going through the Discord pin messages, trying to figure out what could change and what couldn't. So I think we learned a few things about Discord along the way as well. But yeah, immediately identified any of the places where the dates and times for the calls could change. There were a couple of actions that were taken, just so people understand. In some cases, a date was changed where the content around it was relevant, so we kept it and the date was updated. There were other cases where a pinned post had aged and it was no longer really relevant. So we unpinned it so that that bad information was no longer right front and center. Where there was a question perhaps of how does that leave the channel, is there missing information? There were situations where Edu had sent messages to people with various questions, or kind of letting them know that a message had been unpinned or perhaps needed to be updated, so that we could have folks that own these channels better react to some of these more complex situations. But otherwise, we went through, and I think there might have been 3 situations where there was a follow-up for another person. Otherwise, it was easy to update a majority of them and get things in sync with the calendar, or just hide older information. So that, other than the follow-ups to folks to change their own messages, or update as such, I think that task is done.
And we would like to share the other documentation that you proposed.
Absolutely. So last week, as we went through a sort of much more basic version of this inventory, it was clear there were a couple challenges. One, it wasn't immediately clear like how things were grouped, so it was hard to understand what exactly all these links might have been. So one of the things that changed along the left, these groupings now these are all things that exist pretty much in the same like tech stack. So the forums are different from the Git book, but everything inside the Git book belongs sort of in that stack. So you can see where different types of information that run across the top are represented there. For example, the working group list and descriptions, we actually have that twice in the Gitbook handbook, including the FAQ. So just an opportunity for people to see that there are some overlap here. And I think the big key thing that comes out of it is each new documentation effort should at least be informed by what's out there already. And is that information up to date? Should it be incorporated into something new? Should everything be updated if perhaps the new effort identifies that the information is out of date and does need to be updated? So I think this at least helps illustrate that there is an expanding ecosystem of places where all this information is, and it is going to continue to get more challenging to keep it all in sync. From here, I don't necessarily have a very specific recommendation, only because I think the conversation last week touched on a lot of different points about other folks that need to be involved and other considerations around technology. And I'm not sure I understand enough of that stuff well enough to make a recommendation other than I feel better informed, at least when documentation requests come along, to help understand where I would find good information if I wanted to reuse it, or where I could collaborate with someone to make sure that what we were doing was in sync with what had come before it. So I think this opens it up for questions and comments from others.
Did you notice anything that was like originally in need of sync from this recopilation of distribution of information that you did?
No, one of the examples probably would be like the working group documentation. If you see how many different places that we have it, they're not in sync. Whether they should be, I think, is a question in some cases, because some information may need to age off. Like that post in the forum, the only reason it's listed there is because it's linked to from a number of places, so it ends up being an immediate access point for people. But it has a date on it. It is older. But if you look through all of these places where the working groups are listed, they're not all the same, and the question of should they be and how do we manage that, is fairly clear. So that's why I provided that one, because I think it's the most obvious situation. But otherwise, I do feel like some folks that are a little bit more experienced than I may need to look at some of these sections, because I'm willing to bet you there's information here that might overlap that I'm not really familiar enough with yet to really make good connections. So that was another consideration I thought was fair to make.
And can I ask you, what does the jello mean?
Yes, so that is my attempt at trying to decorate it with the idea of what is the source of truth? What is the primary version of that information that people would believe the one was most accurate, most current, that you would want to send someone who had questions about it too? And this was just my attempt and to kind of identify that this is an open question of what would each of these be? Where do we think it is? Where should it be? And how do we make sure that we treat it that way going forward if we think that's the case?
Right. I will open the floor then for questions. 5, 4, 3. Just get it.
So I think that the yellow cells are really important. I'm so glad that you're doing that. And I think that, part of it is like when we refer to, so it's like keeping things modular. So that when we refer to, so if you take the working group lists and descriptions, right? Like in row 3, where it's in the forum, right? Then, maybe what we're doing is anytime it's not the place where is the ultimate truth, we keep the information very evergreen. And so what I mean by evergreen is it doesn't change. Like it's just a generic statement of what it is, right? No specifics about dates, times, who's in it, anything like that. Just a very simple description that doesn't change, and then a link. I think that's like, even though it might be sending people in different places, I think that that's okay, right? Way better to be one click away and make sure that it's accurate than to have like a ongoing octopus where we're never really sure, whether something's up to date. So I think this is really good. I love where you're going.
So I will suggest then we could identify which are the source of truth for all of this information, and then on this section of the title, just add the link to the source of truth, and that's the one we have to keep updated. And then the other thing that I suggested to Jason is to have a separate Google Doc that could be linked here, that will have all the text. That is like consolidation of all this text in a single place. So it is the other document that could be the source of truth. But besides that, I don't have any other recommendations. Does anyone else have something else to recommend or suggest? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So, Jason, shall we attempt or do an attempt to identify the source of truth and just finish this document to have the information a little bit more detailed? So at least we will have this as a guide. Does that make sense to you?
It does. I think the source of truth identification, I can certainly help with that, but I think, as I said, I may not be quite as educated in some areas where I might be looking at two versions of something and not necessarily be able to distinguish which one might be more current, because I don't actually know the information well enough to know for sure. So I would need some help on that. But otherwise, I guess it would make sense for us to identify what else do we want to catalog about this information, because part of the challenge is that some of this stuff is source code controlled already. Like if you look at the Git book, and that's going to be under source code control already, which is one of the challenges in managing it. So I think we're already, if we have sources of truth that way, I think we already have some documentation on where to go to get those. I just need to figure out, how does that link to some other catalog of it? How do we keep the catalog up to date, if we're trying to list where these things exist externally, even if it's a Google document? So I'm not quite clear exactly what detail we want to collect and how we're going to use it, but I can certainly help experiment with that and see what we come up with.
All right. Okay. I think we can achieve this with one more sitting down. Just a working session, 45 minutes. I think it's doable.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that then.
Okay.
Hey, Edu, I have a question about like the source control thing. I understand that with code, like with software, you definitely want control over the code. But for this kind of information, like, I don't know, I feel like we've kind of bled like software practices into an area where it's not really that useful, to be honest. I think these kinds of things, like, it's way smarter to have like a group of trusted people who have access rights and an easy way to edit things. Yeah, end of statement, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'll add to that throughout this entire thing, my intention was to try to continue to sort of lay a foundation for an ongoing conversation about that information management. Like, what is it that needs to be done? And I think right now, what I feel is, though, based on the feedback that these conversations have created, is that there still are some questions about exactly what it is that we want to be able to do. What is a long-term choice in being able to do this? So at a minimum, I feel comfortable about the action item to get that up to date. But I do think that it comes back as conversations, are had about new documentation that gets requested, that sort of thing, because there's overlap. And if we don't use this to drive those conversations to determine is now the time we make a change and how we do that, then we'll obviously not have gotten the benefit of this particular document as much as it can help us right now. So I think I agree with Gideon that we've got to keep challenging ourselves to figure out, like, what does it mean to store and manage this information, and this document should help us continue to drive that conversation.
All right. Thank you for that, Jason. Costa, are you ready to share the screen for the spreadsheet that you updated? So
Yeah.
just to provide context, we are trying to sort of improve the guy role in preparations also for the next term. And the spreadsheet was one of these things that didn't update SAP, because we have been using almost the same for, I think, around 8 to 6 months or something like that. So Costa, yeah, he will present. Go ahead.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is the file that we were using, which we used to type manually. So there was date of arrival, the date of contact, who contacted, the name of the user on the Discord, their name, well, the things that they were asked to fill on the survey once they entered the Discord. Through using the bot. So on the Discord, there's a channel called bot setup, and there we can introduce a command to download a file with all of the responses that the new users have given. And you get the Excel file, and this is the Excel file after some changes. I added a column for the welcome message, the attendance to the orientation call, and then the attendance to not attendance. If they ask to have a one-on-one call, their level of familiarity with Web3, who refer them to the TEC, and then the one that I think is the more important one is if they have become a member of TEC after going through all the onboarding process. I could only do like some informative summaries of the entrance of the newcomers. I think the most important analysis would be about the users that stay in the TC, but I think we're going to have to talk to the stewards to be able to do a follow-up on the members that actually stay on the TC. So the ones that the graphs that I did already, like, it's just a simple like informative graph. So why the users come to the TC? Mostly they are curious or looking for education or want to be a contributor. They are mostly familiar with Web3. Some of them, just 10%, don't know what Web3 is. And on the referral side, it's like equally shared among Twitter, friends, which I really don't know what they mean when they say a friend, by members of the TC, or by another DAO, or the conference also. Going back to the Discord bot data, I think there is some things that could be changed in the survey that they get, just so we can get more easily treatable data. For example, how did you find? I think we should give some options instead of an empty box that they could just fill with whatever information. Now I summarized all the options. For example, on the reason to join in these ones, where they are curious, they're looking for education, full contribution, partnership, and proposal, because the other ones, they are not significant. And for example, also Web3 familiarity. Right now, they have like the option to just write how familiar they are, and they are just responses that are not significant to us. Like, what does it mean that they are intimately related to Web3? Or there were some responses that are not useful to us. So I think we could change the survey bot into a multiple choice, maybe. And yeah, I would do also the same for the for the way they got to know the TC. I would also put maybe a multiple choice. And the time zone and the daytime, I don't think it's relevant for us. Maybe the time zone to coordinate calls, but in the end, like, everyone knows what's best for them. So I don't know if this is useful information for us to have in the database. And what else? I added an instruction page just so anyone can do this. So this is the command that you have to type on the bot setup channel. Here is explained how to transform it, because it's not readily useful, not readily usable for an Excel file. So it's easier than it looks, but you just have to do a data transformation. You just click like on this tab, which would be data in English, and I don't know if I should go through this now, or anyway. You go to data and you transform the. Let me show. Maybe it's better to show. How do I show this?
No worries. I mean, I think this is relevant for someone who is gonna do it.
Okay, agree. These are the steps to add the data in here. The graphs and tables, I put them so, well, tables, it's only 3 graphs, but I put them so they automatically change every time we add new data information. And for the member follow-up, it's just adding a yes on the welcome message, yes on the orientation call, and then yes if they had a one-on-one call. I think what is important to change is the assistance on a one-on-one call, orientation call, and the follow-up on the members, whether they stay active in the TC or not, because then we can see if we are properly reaching out and acquiring new members. I don't know if I explain myself properly, but if you ask me, I think it would be better to respond to your questions.
Tam, was this what you envisioned for this spreadsheet when initially was bringing it to the table?
Yeah, I mean, there's some nice updates for sure. I think the most important thing that Costa said was reconfiguring the survey to capture more useful data. I think that's the part that is probably going to be the most important. You know, when we had not drop down choices in the survey, we had people who really wrote, free form, very expressive, whatever they wanted to say. And that was actually really useful to have that kind of information. And then we switched it to drop down. So now we have almost robotic data, but we don't get to know the person at all, So there's no way for them to, there's not so much expression of their personality or themselves or what their interests are as much as there was before. So I think that I think that what we might want to look at is like, does this information give us enough for what we want to achieve in the user journey? Or do we want to capture more in the beginning? And I think the most important part was just making sure that we have a clear picture of somebody's entire journey through the TC, their touch points from when they landed to the survey data to the one-on-ones to the follow-ups. I don't remember if you scrolled enough to the right to see that there were some touch points following the one-on-ones, but I think that would be something we could capture as well.
Yeah, I think my point is well, not my point. My perspective might be a bit robotic on the data, but I think it's really useful to have really treatable data, like on the survey, and maybe it would be good to add a section on the survey for them to write their interests, but at least we have the necessary important data for us on a proper manageable way. And I forgot what I wanted to say.
I think the column that we are left to fill, it's the one-on-one calls. We still need to add we will add only the one-on-one from the last month and a half. From the calendar, we will just add the names and match name, because it's a more tricky, because they are all in TC guide, so they are not on Discord names. So we actually don't know what are their handles. We will have to track them back, and then based on those, we will start building that journey information with the last month people.
I know what. Sorry.
No, go ahead and finish.
I know what I wanted to say is that I think it's going to be really important to have the information on the members that actually stay on the TC, because I think it's intuition, but I think there's going to be a significance on the origin of the members, and that would help us properly do a better outreach. So, for example, if 70% of the members that come after a conference stay in the TC, maybe it will give us information to do like an outreach campaign when there's a conference.
Yeah, sure. I also think I see that the one-on-one call looks like it might be binary, like a yes/no, rather than like who did the one-on-one, what date was it, so that we can know when to follow back up with the person who did the one-on-one. I mean, with the new member.
Yeah, you're right. And also, now that you say that, I think also it would be interesting to know if on the referral they say they have referred my member, that they give the name of the member that referred them. If that's like an option that we would put on the updated survey bot.
Does anyone know, how do I launch the survey bot to go through it again?
No clue. I already had a lot of trouble with the data bot.
Yeah, I want to walk through the experience again. I haven't used it since we launched it.
You have to leave the server and enter again.
No, there's got to be another way. Vi knows.
Yeah, exactly. Hello, Benz.
Hey,
how are you?
I'm doing well. I was just out for a walk. Saw your message, so jumped in.
No worries. I thought about you because we are going through some data that Costa prepared for using the orientation data survey that existed, and I don't know. I thought your feedback could be really interesting on this. In the meantime, you can I will send you this link that you will see on the screen, so you can take a look, and then whenever you have anything to mention, you can just unmute yourself and let us know.
Okay, thanks.
No, thank you. Costa, were you gonna say something?
No, but then now that you give me the put me on the spot, I think what I should do now is to maybe do a small document on changes that I think should be done on the survey bot, so we can make an issue on it and ask ViVIB.
So there is an issue already for updating the bot, so we can plug in all these changes in a single one. So yeah, prepare the document, and then we will add the document to the issue. If you go through the epic that we have created, there is an issue specific to updating the survey bot. So we can add the document to that, so he's on the loop about this.
Okay.
Also, so a few things. One is that over the last couple of days, Edu and I had some back and forth with ViViV about the next generation survey bot. And so we were just kind of trying to check what functionality is actually available. And yeah, Tam, I couldn't remember what it actually looked like either, so he was kind of explaining it. So we were talking about things like, can it do branching? What I mean by that is, if you answer, why did you come here, and you say, I would like to contribute. If you selected, I want to contribute, then the next question might be, which of these working groups would you like to contribute to, right? And he said that he thinks that that's possible, but he has to check on that. And there was also some other questions about, because one of the things that Edu and I were talking about is this whole question of like, what are the next questions that we want to ask, and collecting interest, and then also getting specific about like what types of working groups they'd like to get involved in. That's the part that to me is still kind of unclear what that functionality looks like. And I think part of that is ViViV figuring out how expensive it is to actually build kind of branching options. But I guess the point is that there is this other conversation that's been happening, and it'd probably be good to loop Costa into that conversation too, I'm thinking. The other question I have is, so I think it's great that we've got this the is a member column in here, or is that what it says? Has become a member. And then I think the question right now is like, okay, well, what does that mean? We had diagrammed all that stuff in the in all that diagramming work that we did over the last couple months. And now the question is like, okay, what's actually here that we could actually use to check that box?
Yeah, I wrote that without giving it much thought. my intention was just to have information on whether they are active or involved with the community. I don't know, like how to assess that.
Yeah, I guess I am asking because I think it's great, and I think that we can maybe make just some short-term steps, right now that may not be ultimately where we want to be, but it's a stepping stone to what we mean by membership. Did they go through orientation, for example? Or, did they do orientation, or did they do a one-on-one call? Either one of those might be enough for the first step.
What I had in mind when I wrote that was, for example, to ask the stewards whether on their weekly calls there's new members taking part in them. So then I would consider that these members are involved with the TC, and I would type yes on that column.
Hello, Libby. We are going through a document that it's on the agenda. Is the one that you are seeing on the screen, and it's a document that Costa prepared for processing the data from the processing the data from the survey bot that people fill when they enter the server. And basically, we are talking about how we handle this part, which is the welcome message. That's the part that is already sent. The orientation call, if a newcomer join an orientation call, if they join a one-on-one, or if they have become a member, and then we are trying to assess how we will fill, or the process to fill this column of how someone became a member. And there was a suggestion that we could create a channel of communication with stewards, or just introduce this in a way to the call. I don't know. I mean, one of the suggestions that I had in mind was that, every agenda has like the assistancy of everyone that joins the call. Maybe adding a color to the agenda to make sure that that person, if it's in green, it's because it's new or something along those lines. Because I'm not sure stewards will come to this spreadsheet and update it every week. I don't. Sorry if I not trust that process to happen. I think it will be more on us to do so. But anyways, that's what we are talking about, Livy. Anything you would like to comment on this?
Thanks, Edu. That looks awesome. Is that not something we could? You mean to get attendance? Like, how could we track attendance to calls?
How we can track if someone new join a call, for example, for the first time, that then joined a call, just as a form to see if the one-on-one or the orientation call led you somewhere, and if there's a track back of that.
I don't know. I suspect ViViV would have some good ideas there. Maybe there is a way to see in an automated way.
I think yeah, you might have to talk to ViViV or someone who can do the bot work, and you'd have to like pull like the date people joined the server, and then also look at attendance and somehow be able to like match that up across, or you might be able to pull both those at once. I'm not sure.
I think Ben just said something that ring a bell on me, Gideon. I think this is where the role selection comes in play, because if someone with the label, just for the sake of this conversation, but just someone with the label newcomer joins a call, it could be easier to track maybe by a bot, because it will just identify that a person with that role entered the call, something along those lines. But I guess we will have to make sure that that's possible even. So yeah, I mean, it's still a mystery. Any suggestion on this?
No, go ahead, Gideon.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, we did a bunch of work on this, so I think it's important to go back to. I just shared the screen here, and what we were originally talking about for the last couple months was that a newcomer would come in, they would do some self-learning, they would go through the orientation, they would do the initial community offering, and then they would become a member. And we don't have the initial community offering. Maybe that won't show up for quite some time. So it's like, if you take that out, then it's self-learning, orientation, and then community member. And then from there, we talked about that they would then do some type of pathfinding, right? To like be, either through the guide helping them, the Communitas guide, or doing it with peers, or finding their own way, or choosing not to join a working group. But either way, they're still a community member at that point. And if they become active in a working group, then they become, a working group member. And we said in some cases that's like a contributor too. So I think it's fine to change our minds if we want to, but this is what we said we were going to do. And so I think that we're pretty close to being able to do, just the member thing by just, barring the initial community offering thing. It's like, did they go through some type of education process? We haven't defined that yet. And then the orientation. So that's, I guess, my question.
Maybe, and this is just following your chain of thoughts, maybe if it's too hard to build a bot to track the calls and like, what does it mean to be plugged into a working group? What if we just consider that become a member? We go back to the initial thought of what if becoming a member is being part of the praise system. So we will just pull out data from the praise system and see if someone with a newcomer role or any other role. There, I have two options. That one that we get the data from the praise system. So if someone we take this column with yes when that person joined and sort of became part of the praise system. And the second option is we just open a channel for community offering, and then we manually track that as a has become a member kind of stepping stone, at least for the short term, like for the first 2 weeks kind of process, rather than in a month there will be another iteration of this. But it will be easier for me. It will be easier to, for example, have that channel after orientation call. I will check that channel once a week. I will make sure that that person who came to orientation call has or has not posted on the community offering, and then wait about 2 weeks more and just do a personal check-in and say, hey, have you engaged with the working group or not? And then click on the yes or not for that. Does that make any sense, Gideon?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and also I think this could be a way of getting at the thing that Tam was looking for, which is a more personal understanding of folks that's not just data driven, but it's like, maybe we start the initial community offering with just that. It's like, tell us about yourself. Like, why are you here? Yeah. And so if when you come in, you're a newcomer, and then you do that initial community offering, which is very simple to begin with. You go to some type of orientation, either the group orientation or a one-on-one. And I don't know about the education thing. We haven't really, we haven't nailed that in the short term, but yeah, and I think that praise is probably the most pragmatic way of doing it. It's like once you've done these two things, you get activated with praise. I mean, Livia, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on this, but like you get praise activation, and then once that happens, you remember.
The thing is that we can't gate that. Like anyone can activate their praise as soon as they're in the server.
Yeah, but the idea is that they will become a member not because they activated praise, but because they get a yes tick on these other columns. So they went through orientation call, they did the community offering, and then they activated the praise account. That's what makes them a member, not only getting the tick on the praise. Does that make sense, Livy?
Yeah, like having them all together. You have to check all those check boxes and then you're in.
Correct.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And can I throw out one more thing too? Because we're looking at this NFT, like an NFT campaign, like a couple of campaigns that will come out. And one of the things that I've been talking with Santi about this. One of the things that we were looking at is like, how the Hatchers got an NFT? Well, what if when you become a member, you get an NFT, right? It's not like a fancy thing or anything like that, but like we do kind of a similar thing just to acknowledge like, okay, you're a member, and maybe that membership becomes important later on for getting access to other types of things. Like you need the NFT and you need the token in order to gain access to certain types of things. I think this is some of the things that we might kind of key the NFT campaigns, the future NFT campaigns off of. But I'm just throwing it out right now because Edu and I were talking about this on Friday as like a possibility. It'd be a nice thing to be able to give people.
Yeah, that sounds really nice.
All right. Any other comment on this area?
I
5.
just want to say I agree. I love that idea.
Nice. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So let's give it some thought to this outreach. Maybe rearrange a little bit. Gideon, we will talk about this on Friday. But rearrange a little bit the order and maybe put up the community offering sooner than expected. And it's the easiest way manually to do so. And then Costa will prepare the document of his suggestions for the survey bot, and we can sync on those suggestions and send one single document to ViVIV. Do you have, you already did it, but is there any other update on the conversation that you had with Vi regarding the bots? Anything that we need to know?
No, you're in that thread, but it's he basically was going to go off. I think he wants to build this, is my sense. He would like to build this. But I think it's going to be complicated. And I also feel like I don't think we should spend huge resources if there are simpler ways of doing it that don't require him to spend a whole bunch of time, then we should just think about how we simplify. And so that's what I'm hoping he's going to come back with, is some type of estimate on like how long it would take.
Okay, nice to
Like
know.
for example, in the way of simplifying, some of the changes that I mentioned, we really wouldn't need to change. Well, from my point of view, we really wouldn't need to change that much the bot setup. Is just to give better instructions on how to answer, because some of the answers are really useful from a data point of view. They are just like simple answers. Maybe it's just a way to tell people how to give the input, if that doesn't sound like too robotic.
Yeah, I was going to ask something along those lines. I think it's very useful to have some multiple choice answers that we could do like a simple analysis after. Was that idea of including 2 questions for the tea flower ever incorporated into it?
We haven't prepared the document yet to send to ViViV, but it's present.
Present on your mind? Sorry, you made this movement. You made it. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. It's present. It's present on my mind to add it to the document with the rest of the stuff.
If there is a document, I could add it. Yeah.
We haven't drafted yet, so it's
Okay.
we are using to track this the epic that we created for members. But yeah, we were sort of waiting for ViViV to understand what was his timeline with, so we can sort of give them what he can afford, not what we want necessarily. You know, like find a balance there in between what can be a shift and what cannot be a shift.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Does anyone else have anything else you would like to share? I don't know, Ben. Is there any feedback that you have regarding this? This also is your area of expertise.
Yeah, I just think there's probably a lot of different ways you can do stuff. It kind of, I think you're right, and it depends on what we have to invest in it, and there's going to be like simple survey solutions that might get you what you want, or go the complex route and try to do bots and a little more automated. It's just like kind of deciding on what we're trying to accomplish, I think. So that's kind of all I have to add. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Vince. All right. Is there something else someone wants to say in the last 3 minutes we have left? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Tomorrow, or when is Softcoff leaving? Tomorrow, Wednesday. I always forget about the timing.
Wednesday.
Wednesday. There you go. Wednesday, we will have this exercise of. We didn't have today to do so, but it's basically do this manual update so far of the TE flower. So I encourage everyone who joined this call to, if you can, join on Wednesday to Softcoff call to try to do this on a Figma file together. It will be really helpful. So with that being said, thank you so much everyone who joined today, and I look forward to see you next Monday.
Bye.
Thanks, Edu.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.